Hi Matthew, thanks for coming in. It's obvious that by the end of March we're going to have a new government. What difference is that going to make?
For business, the difference will be access to government. A lot of businesses and other organisations over the last 16 years have got used to a particular way of interacting with the government that's often been seen to be based on connections and personal relationships. The O'Farrell government has said that that's going to change, that business and other organisations need to have a solid proposal. They need to be able to demonstrate the benefit to the state or a particular constituency, and they don't need to have a particular personal relationship. Barry O'Farrell is fond of saying that the front door is open but the back door is firmly shut. So for business and other organisations, they need a good proposal to take to the government, one that will enhance the state, enhance the governance of the state. In terms of the more broader changes across the government, over the life of any long government, Labor or Liberal, it becomes increasingly difficult as the government gets older for that government to do anything, and you saw this with the Howard government, you've seen it now with the Yemma, Rees, Keneally governments in particular over the last few years. They run out of political capital. The longer a government is in power, the more and more different interest groups become annoyed at something that the government has said or done. So it becomes harder and harder for governments to implement the policies that they want to and implement the policies that are necessary for the ongoing health of the state. So the lack of political capital is one of the big problems that faces the government, the current Labor government. With a new government coming in, they're afforded a wide leeway by the population and by the stakeholder groups that they interact with. They're given licence to implement new things. They're a young government full of people who haven't been in government before. It has been 16 years since the coalition has been in power in New South Wales, and so they are full of that vim and vigour that people find attractive about government. So that you'll see that across a range of areas, and Barry O'Farrell and his team have outlined 5 key areas for that they're targeting, that they want to change, that they want to focus on, and it's in those areas that I think we'll see some change.
What role do you see for public affairs companies like Parker and Partners in the new government?
Well, Barry O'Farrell will continue a trend that we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. It started with Kevin Rudd, where they are looking to create more transparency and more professionalism around public affairs and government relations. And in the federal sphere, we've had government relations or lobbyists registers. They were quickly followed up in the state spheres. We've got them in New South Wales and in all the other states as well. There have been some campaign finance reforms implemented by the Keneally government. Barry O'Farrell said he's going to take those further. So campaign finance reform and lobbying are kind of interlinked because they're all around transparency and access to government. Who has influence and access over government? So he will move that along a little bit further. At the moment, only government relations and public affairs firms like Parker and Partners and others are required to register on the lobbyists register. So if you are a large corporate, for example, with an in-house government relations capability, you don't need to register that capability or that resource on the register. That will change. But what that means is, what I referred to earlier, that it's about having a professional approach to interacting with government. There's nothing wrong with organisations or individuals interacting with government and lobbying government on particular issues. In fact, it's a vital part of our democratic institutions that people are able to do that they have access to government. And so what it will mean is that, as I said earlier, it's about the project, it's about the idea, it's about the benefit it has to the state, it's about the benefit it has to a particular constituency. and being able to demonstrate that. And organisations like ours, like Parker and Partners, the professional public affairs organisations, are able to help companies and not-for-profits and individuals shape their discussions and their arguments and in a way that presents it in a way that the government understands, because governments and bureaucracies talk particular languages, and often companies, private individuals and not-for-profits don't understand that language of government. So organisations like Parker and Partners can help other organisations communicate with government.
The O'Farrell government will have spent 16 years in opposition and will have very little, if any, experience of being in government. How do you think that's going to impact?
For any party that's been out of power for a long period of time and comes into government, they can sometimes be tripped up on the responsibilities of office. We saw that with the Howard government in its first year or so, lost I think 3 or 4 ministers. So the coalition is looking to a group of senior figures from the coalition side of politics, from the National and Liberal side of politics, to provide advice and counsel. And those are people like Nick Greiner, the former Premier of New South Wales, Patricia Forsyth, the former Liberal MLC, who's now head of the Sydney Business Chamber, the broadcaster Alan Jones, who himself has been a candidate for Liberal Party office for some time, people like John Howard, of course, Max Moore-Wilton, who was a senior public servant in New South Wales and federally, and Arthur Sinodinos, who was John Howard's Chief of Staff and now works for a bank, but has a role in the Liberal Party organisation. So it'll be people like those that Barry O'Farrell and his team call on for advice, particularly in the early months when they're still finding their feet around Governor Macquarie Tower.
The Coalition has identified a lot of long-term projects that need doing, the infrastructure projects, railways, etc. But these take a long time to deliver any direct benefits to the government or to the people. How are they going to get the short-term wins that they will need to keep their popularity up?
Well, the first thing to say is that the electorate gives most governments 2 goes, at least. So you would expect that the Coalition would be in power for 8 years at the very least. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Jeff Kennett said when he was in power in Victoria in the 1990s that to demonstrate that the changes that he was implementing in that state had tangible benefits for the people. He used major events and civic reconstruction to demonstrate that. So money was put back into major events. It was put back into refurbishing major civic infrastructure like museums and art galleries and so on. And people could see as they walked down the street that the new government was doing something, that things were being built, that old buildings looked new again, that they'd been refurbished. And it's those kinds of things that that the Coalition will be looking to do. But it's also said, the Coalition have also said that they will get moving on the southwest and northwest rail links on day one. The plans for those rail links have been around for a long time. And with the southwest in particular, you would expect that that wouldn't take many years, as some infrastructure projects do, before people started seeing some benefits there. And there are some other infrastructure projects where they can start to demonstrate by people seeing bulldozers and machinery around the place that the work is underway and that things are changing.
Well, thanks a lot, Matthew. That's been terrific.